not involved in the incident. He was released back to the school administrators and then eventually his parents. There were no guns, there were no explosives found at either school, so I want to make sure that was clear. Our investigation of the Boerne High School threat was determined to be false, so that school was cleared and allowed to resume normal operations. Once Champion High School was cleared, Boerne officers, Boerne Fire Department, and Kendall County EMS stood by to ensure the hundreds of parents that were waiting outside the scene were able to pick up their children. Our investigation into the incident at Champion High School started immediately. Our detectives started looking into how the call was received and later received information about a possible suspect. Due to the information we had, I elected to minimize the communication to ensure our suspect would not be alerted in any way. Yesterday evening, just after 7 p.m., Boerne police detectives served a search warrant at the juvenile's home in Bexar County. During their investigation at the home, they contacted the 16-year-old juvenile male who later confessed to calling in the bomb threat / the swatting incident at Champion High School. Earlier today, shortly after about 3:30, this juvenile was arrested and is being charged with 3 felonies. The felonies are false alarm or report, terroristic threat, and also terrorism. This is still an active and ongoing investigation, and let me remind you, there is a juvenile involved, so we will not get any information about the juvenile. But I do feel it's important for our students, staff, and parents that were directly affected by this hoax to know the person responsible for this frightful day has been apprehended. And so that concludes my actual statement to y'all. Yeah.
Thank you, Chief Perez. As superintendent of schools, our highest priority is the safety, security, and well-being of our students and staff, and we take any and all of these threats very seriously. I would like to thank Chief Perez for his leadership and his close collaboration with our team, our district team, and the entire staff at Champion High School. I'd like to thank our law enforcement partners for their swift and immediate presence at Champion High School on that day. I'd also like to recognize the efforts of Champion High School Principal, Dr. Nahosa, and his entire staff and all of our students on that day. And I'd also like to recognize our first responders. I'd like to thank our city, police, fire, EMS, regional, and leadership federal involvement for their presence and leadership on site at Champion High School. I'd also like to thank our police officers, detectives, and state authorities who identified and apprehended this individual swiftly. Our law enforcement partners are exceptional in their service to our school district, and I thank them.
And with that, we'll just kind of open it up to some questions. I'll start with NBC Telemundo.
The juvenile is part of Boerne ISD or in Bexar County?
That juvenile is a former student. He is no longer a student of Boerne ISD. He's been out of the school system for probably about a year.
Kens? KSAT?
What was found during the search warrant? Any actual guns or bombs? And then is this a joke or did he say anything?
So we won't go into the details of his statements because that's a still ongoing investigation. But what we did in the search warrant was for electronic devices, computers, cell phones, anything that we felt was used to push out that message. And so that's what we're in there. But no guns, no bombs, no anything like that was found at his residence.
Do we know any history of a bad reputation at the ISD while he was a student here? Or?
That's still ongoing investigation. That's still part of it. Since we just arrested him today, that's part of the ongoing part is to get all his background and everything. So that's still ongoing.
Any criminal history or juvenile criminal history that we're aware of?
No, sir. Not that we know of at this point.
Thank you, Bernie Starr.
The phone number listed in the threat, was that 7-something area code? Was that trackable, or was his number 210 or 830?
So as far as the phone number, we're not going to go into the information on the phone number because that's a big part of the investigation. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But we're not going to go into the number that was put out on social media. That is not his personal number, though.
Did the 16-year-old have brothers, sisters in the school system?
Not that we're aware of.
Express News.
So a lot of people are mobilized for this threat and
Correct.
it caused a lot. Is there any discussions about either upping PPD presence at school and what safeguards could this kind of mobilization going to be required anytime somebody does something like this?
Yeah, so we have a contract with the school for school resource officers. So our officers are actually in the school. We continue to keep those officers. There's a SRO in every school within the Boerne Independent School District, whether it's supplied by our department, the Sheriff's Office, or Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department. We're also going to continue to monitor. This is one of those things that was called in. We have to take every hoax. Any call like this, we have to take it seriously and do our due diligence to prove otherwise. So.
How many officers at one time may have been a champion?
So
Through the searching?
So I know just from our department alone, we had about 20, and I would probably say add about 30 more between all the other entities I mentioned earlier, along with the canines. So.
KBB?
I was out seeing yesterday, and with a group of parents, there's a lot of parents that were there that day, yesterday, that were extremely frustrated, no information whatsoever. They were asking us, and we had nothing to give them. What do you say to that?
So as far as the communication that was putting out, we were putting out information through our Boerne Police Department Facebook page. Usually whenever there is a major or serious incident within the Boerne city limits, we fall back with our communications director, and so all the emergency information flows through our page. So people get the accurate information and they get it timely. And we were putting that message out to those folks, to the community who are following the page. As I mentioned earlier, some of the details as far as addressing the media and addressing the social media, stuff like that, once we kind of learned about a possible suspect, a person of interest at that time, we wanted to minimize the information, the details that were going out, because we didn't want to impede with the investigation itself.
After Uvalde, are there still lessons to be learned out of this?
Well, of course, there's a report from the DOJ just came out, a 600-plus page report. So all that's going to go through. We are looking at that. We're looking at all the recommendations, and I think every police department across the country, if not the world, is going to look at that and take those recommendations seriously.
How soon after the 925 call came in, did you have officers in the building?
It was immediate. We already had an SRO in the school, correct?
And just one last question.
All right, last question?
Which is, what made y'all believe that the threat at Champion was a distraction for an actual threat at Burns? What led up to that?
Again, we had some internal communication just with stuff that was going on with the school that we learned of, and so we weren't too sure, but we wanted to err on the side of caution. Again, we can't take all this stuff for granted, so we felt it was best to deploy our resources to both schools, lock them down, and that way we could conduct our investigation to determine the validity of those threats. And once we determined there was no threat to Boerne High School, we immediately reopened that school, and they went back to normal operations.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you for watching KSAT, and if you're on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with San Antonio's latest news and weather.